these different categories, and then you have exception types, and you can choose if they're payable or not. So these exceptions go to two different things. These exceptions will all be going towards your driver's time cards. So I'm going to switch screens over here. So I think, Jamie, this is where you're getting a little confused. So those exceptions that we saw in the setup, that's what would go into this box. And that's what would correlate to the driver's timesheet. So how you would add one of those exceptions would be you have the route open in jobs or static jobs, and then you click on a stop. So I had added one already just so we could have an example, but what you do is you do add new, and then you have all your different options that you guys have entered.
Okay.
So this would be like if you guys pay your drivers, let's say, an hour for shuttling trailers, or if they're in a shuttle car going to the route, like that, or you guys had a scheduled break in here. That's what I had put in as my example, was a scheduled break and then 30 minutes. So let's say the driver logs off, but you guys actually pay him for that. That was the example I used. So right here, and then typically, I would have to go back and look at this, but we would just use payable, and then the time right here is what I would put in, and then a reasoning, and then you would click save. So I did put one in already to show you guys. So if we go into timesheets, that's where you see the one exception here.
Okay. Let me ask you one quick question in regards to these exceptions. So currently we use those a little bit differently. So we actually add them through the client timesheets. So when we have the timesheets up, we right mouse click add exception, and we add them that way. And one thing with one of the later updates is we are not able to add them or edit them or delete them after the timesheet has been validated. So would we be able to enter them in the load plane after a timesheet has been already validated or edited or whatever?
So what you would need to do is you would have to invalidate that timesheet, make your changes, and then revalidate.
Okay, so even with it being in the load plane, you still have to do that?
Correct.
Okay.
Another question that I have is, with those, can you, within rotations, because you mentioned a paid scheduled break. So if that's something that's always happening, can you add that exception within the rotation so when it's posting that, it automatically adds it every time?
Yep. So what you would do is, instead of being, I'm currently in jobs, you would just go to static jobs. So we actually have another customer that they paid their drivers an hour of shuttle time for being in a shuttle car to go, let's say, from the end location to back to the home terminal. So what I did is I did the same thing. They're doing it Monday through Saturday, so I put it in here so I don't have to be building them every time. So again, what you would do is you would click on whatever route that you want. You would click on the stop that it correlates to, either the first or last, or if it was their break. Click add new, and then add that information and click save. Then every single time that route posts, it's going to be there. So then if for some reason you have a different driver on the route that doesn't take their break, or whatever the case would be, that driver doesn't need it, you would have to then delete it if you put it into static jobs.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm just going to hit cancel just so it doesn't save. Then the other side that you were talking about was you're putting the exception into timeline, and then you're not seeing it in the billing or on the report. So I'm going to show you that. So here was the route that you were sending over, and then here is the stop, the Jersey City, that you put the exception in for. So if we click on it and then click show exception, so the first stop you have as suggestion, and then the second one you have as validated. So this first stop is the one that you weren't seeing on the late arrival report. So what was happening there is because it's still as a suggestion, it's not going to come up. So I actually had the report open here. So highlighted right here is that route. And then if we look over, it's as suggestion. And then if I scroll over, there's no reason code, no notes that you would have put in. So how to get those notes, even though you put them in already, you actually need to change it to validated attention or rejected for it to show up. So if I would do that, then you would see it on the report. So let's just say I change it to validated. And then I'll run a new late arrival report. And then right here is that load number. So if we go over to the right, then you see validated and your reasoning. So you either have to have it as attention, validated, or rejected for that reason code and note to show up on your report. When you do go into LoadTrek, if you do have it as, LoadTrek client, if you do have it as just suggested, you will still see it in the billing plane. So let me find. I guess I could just type it in, that would be easier. So if we click here, this red box would be your, well, I changed it now, but before, I should have showed this before and after. Before you would have seen that this just had suggested here, or suggestion. So it will still show up in your billing screen. So how I found that was if you just open the route up and then you look in your arrival data, and then any box that is highlighted means that there was a exception that you guys had created. So then if I go to the depart time, click on it, I see your exception that you guys had put in there.
So how do you recommend, because with 5466s, I'll use that for the example, is maybe at the first facility, they were delayed for 4 hours, but they were able to make up, an hour of that en route. So what is billed or what the post office is going to pay is only going to be 3 of those 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
How would you enter that into that load to know what the final amount to be billed is? Because it would be, in this example, it would be Chicago ISC where they were delayed for 4 hours, but if they made up an hour and they were really only 3 hours late, how is that going to show in here to know that billing?
So one way that we used to do it is when we were in timeline. So let's say you were talking about the Chicago one is what caused it. So we would put our exception here and then we would do the validated or attention. And then, so let's say the first one we would put attention, put our reasoning, and then everything afterwards we would just put validated. So then you're only, so let's say this first one we put attention, we put in our reasoning, and then on the next stop, because it's correlated to that first stop, we would just put validated, and just put stop number 1 so that you know that you're not billing for that second stop, you're billing for the first stop. Does that make sense?
Okay, so you carry it all the way through.
Correct. Yeah, so if you had a multiple, like 6 stops in there, the first one, your issue stop, is where you would put your attention or rejected, and then everything after that, you would put your validated. Or at least that's how we did it, but I mean, you guys can make it fit towards your needs. That's just my suggestion on that.
Okay.
Right, and then if I can interject too, you could then, on the last stop, that's where you adjust the value. So instead of 4 hours, the value could be changed to 3 hours.
Okay, so I know you referenced that that was how you did it. Is there a better way that you're doing it now? Or, I mean, is there another suggestion of how to do it?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to phrase it like that. That was when we were still in the trucking side of things. That's how I was doing it with my driver group. Now we're just solely LoadTrek, so
Okay.
Didn't mean to say it like that.
Just want to make sure we've got options out there.
Yeah, and definitely, I think personally, I really liked using the validated just for everything after, and then either attention or rejected for the first stop. I think then when you run your report, you are only sifting through those attention, and then anything validated, you can kind of not, I don't want to say cancel out, but they're not as important as your attention ones.
So when it is a postal delay, well, any delay, but I'll stay on the 5466 is when you know it's a postal delay and the driver's been held. Not only is that a billing issue that we have to create, which is what we're doing through these exceptions, but is there a simplified way to get that automatically to carry over into the time card side of it?
No, at this moment, there is not. That would require the manual exception entry.
Okay.
But definitely something we will add to our development list. Brooke and I have a considerable list of things that we are learning from customers that would help automate LoadTrek, especially as we move more into the web version. And a lot of great ideas from customers. We've been doing it a certain way for so long from our transportation side of using LoadTrek. And there's a lot of great ideas like that, automating it, from the 5466 side, to the time card.
Right. I mean, because essentially you're doing double work at this point or double research in some cases. And I guess another question would be from the timeline, because the 5500, there can be a variety of reasons why we may incur that, why we're late to a facility. So is there a way, like in the time card exceptions, you can create the different types to kind of categorize what the core issue was for reporting and analysis purposes? Is there any future development that's being looked at to have categories within these exceptions?
That's it, to have subcategories of the categories. That is something that we can absolutely look into. As far as the exceptions themselves, Brooke, could you click on that?
Oh, on timesheets?
Yeah, are actually in setup. As far as like the different exceptions they have. So, yeah, I mean, you can add additional exception types. I mean, I see here you like trip instruction not followed, weather delay, etc. And so what you're looking for is like more detailed information under each one of those, Jennifer?
Well, I see right now, basically, if it's a late arrival, it's automatically categorized as a 5500, which typically that's if you're arriving late, you're going to get a 5500. But then from within there, as you're researching, which is the same thing that we have to do in the time cards, if someone is outside of their bench, we have a variance that's if it's outside of that, we have to research that. It's either going to be a postal delay or it could be an equipment breakdown. So again, that's where that 5500 might come in. So if it's an arrival and it's automatically categorizing it as a 5500, where you would put in the notes, we could have some type of a category, equipment breakdown, or it might have been weather. Or traffic delay, accident, some of those different categories that we could categorize, again, for reporting purposes.
Sure, and this is actually it right here where you would do that. So the exceptions in this list, they can be used for payable reasons and they can be used for non-payable reasons. So you can see here, like you've got the exception type, and then you have the category. So you've got payable or bill pay. You can also enter them as non-payable, and it's just as for informational purposes only. So you could enter exception type, equipment failure, and the comment you could put in, B&B equipment failure resulting in late arrival at post office. And then that would appear on your late arrival report. It doesn't affect the driver's pay either direction unless you want it to, or you can actually even enter it twice, once for for the late slip purposes and then for the payable purposes.
And I think that's where I was seeing, is there a way in the timeline, since everything is really going towards that web portal, is if in here being able to also have all of those exceptions in one that's going to be for, you're right within the route, you've reviewed it, you've entered it, but it also carries over into the time card. So when a driver's over bench, you
Right.
already have that exception showing up. So then payroll's not having to go back and double research that.
Understood, right. And at the moment, we don't, but that is definitely something we need to address as soon as possible. I agree. It'd be nice to have, like in this area, basically a drop down.
That would feed into the reason code.
Yeah, correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, and then feed over into the time cards as well.
Right.
Because that way
Absolutely.
is it's happening in dispatch, or it's being reviewed by, the person that's reviewing our service performance, and they're identifying an issue and they're noting it in there. Then when it comes to payroll, we're not having to go back and run another report or go research that load again and figure out why is the driver, over bench.
Absolutely. I'm jotting this down right now, because what would be nice, you pay on the benchmark, other companies, pay strictly, by the hour. It'd be nice to be able to choose, all right, our company pays by the bench. Anything over, we need to look for an exception as to why we would be paying this driver, for that extra time, and then have it all, as you said, fed in when you enter the late arrival reasons, have that fed into the payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I can think, we don't do a lot with freight, but even with freight, I could see where that might be useful within the timeline. Again, they might be noting why a load is delayed. Well, if then you have to pay your driver either detention or layover pay, breakdown pay, whatever you want to call it, if there's a way for that to feed over right into the time card side of it, it's just kind of combining the two. And then if those exceptions are also showing up in the billing screen to be able to know what you have to bill on for that load, that's the other piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree, because then it's cutting out the steps that you're having to do from the operation standpoint to the payroll standpoint and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think these are great ideas that we can push towards our development team.
Okay.
Is there any other questions or concerns you guys have that?
I don't think I have any more. I think I kind of took over Jamie's meeting. I don't know if she's got any questions.
Nope.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys. And if you have any other questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of your peak.